Hi Siobhan, can you hear me there?
I can hear you loud and clear, Siobhan.
It's Siobhan coming through to Siobhan. Very confusing. Um, Great to talk to you on Zoom. Great to do this interview, The Day in the Life of Siobhan Murray, a resilience coach. How did you get into that and what's that all about?
So, gosh, I always say I've had the most eclectic career to date. If somebody had told me in my 20s, this is where I'd end up, a psychotherapist, but predominantly coaching people, working with companies, I would have laughed. My career started out by complete chance in the music industry. Back in, I was 20 odd, and I worked for MCV Concerts here in Dublin. And back in the day where you kind of wore 10 different hats and did lots of different things. And it was great. Did that for a few years. And then I moved to London. And, this is you as an impressionable 20-something-year-old, London was the city where the streets are paved with gold. So off I went. And do you know what? I look back and it actually was great. I temped in pretty much every single record company in all of London. So I've worked within the classical departments. I've worked in video departments. I've worked in hip hop. You name it. It was great because you do all these 2-week stints everywhere. And eventually, I worked for a few years for Sony. And I was permanent, and I moved back to Dublin, and I moved back over to London, and I started working for Goldie. And Goldie, for those that don't know, is a Mancunian drum and bass artist, but a phenomenal graffiti artist as well. And at the time, it was huge. This whole drum and bass thing was massive. I didn't even know what drum and bass was. I was so out of my comfort zone, little Catholic Irish Dublin girl.
Was this in the 80s or the 90s?
The 90s, beginning of the 90s. But it was crazy. I mean, it was nothing. Goldie lived on the 24th floor of a tower block in North London. And I worked from his home. And the lift was always broken. I trudge up the stairs, and you just never knew what any day would bring.
So were you like a PA to the stars? Because you also worked for Elton John as well, isn't that right?
Yep. And for Elton, I worked for his, so when I worked for Elton, at that point, Elton had actually gone through quite a rough time, which is documented in his movie Rocket Man. Mm-hmm. He had been managed, brilliant movie. And you know what I think, Siobhan, is really interesting about the movie? It was produced by his husband, David Furnish. So Elton had a huge hand in the storytelling of it. But, there's always, as I say, there's always 3 sides to every story. There's yours, mine, and the truth, because we all have our own version. But that movie is the closest recollection to Elton's truth that will ever be out there. Somebody else may go, who was involved in his world back then, go, that's not really a true account. It was different. But for Elton, that it's the truest account. And I think that's why I think it's an amazing movie. But he, by the time I had worked for him, was his own management company. So he had a team of people around him. He didn't have a manager per se. He had a lawyer. He had his creative director, and I worked for the creative director. So we worked very closely with Elton and the record companies and the promoters, because it was all to do with his music. But housed in the same building was the AIDS Foundation. So his whole empire was there. It was amazing. It was really fabulous.
But you went over, did you do your leaving cert? Or did you finish school early?
I finished school.
And then ended up working in London for all these mega stars.
Yeah. And and it's funny because I do talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. And I suppose for me, I don't look. Someone actually texted me this morning and jokingly said, Siobhan, now you do know you are seen as a little bit of a celebrity. And I roared laughing. I went, you're having a laugh, because I don't see that.
You are, you've got your best-selling author. You've been on the Late Late Show. You're everywhere at the moment. You're now on The Day in the Life. But you are. We love listening to you. The more I heard you for the very first time on the radio on Ryan's Property Show. on the 1st of November, and you inspired me to do Dry November. And we're going to talk about that as well. Like, you're 13 years without a drop.
Yeah.
And that all stemmed from, being dependent on alcohol, from working in the music industry. I'm telling your story here now. I feel like I know it so well. But like, wasn't it because of not having the Leaving Cert, you felt like you had to prove yourself even more and do even more, and alcohol helped with confidence as well?
You've summed it up. You summed it up perfectly. And I sometimes, I suppose I'm so used to my own story, I kind of forget. Because I remember, as you say that, I remember going out with a guy. I was engaged, and we were living in London, and we were out, and a lot of his friends were Dublin. They were guys and girls. I remember being out, and we were out for drinks, and the conversation goes, I hadn't met them before, and the conversation is, where did you go to college? They were UCD or Trinity, and I just went, give me another drink there, please, now, because I hadn't gone to college. I was when I say worker, I always had a really strong work ethic. So even from 14, I had the part-time job at the weekends after mass in the local sweetie shop. I was always very work driven. So I didn't see that as being a positive. I didn't own the fact to say, oh, well, I didn't go to college. I've gone straight into the working world. I was mortified. I felt like an imposter in that setting. So I would, without realizing it, I can see in hindsight, I'd get another glass of wine and another glass of wine because I didn't feel comfortable. And I think that's why, for me, owning your own story, regardless of what your story is so important, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, as long as you're okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're telling your own truth, and you're being truthful to yourself. Something as well, Siobhan, what struck me when I've heard you in interviews before, the honesty of saying you were at home. Now, you don't call yourself a single parent, solo parenting. Is that correct? 2 young kids.
Yeah, I call it solo parenting, and it's something that only struck me probably a couple of years ago. And, I've got friends who are separated, and they have fabulous relationships with their ex-partners, whether it's the dad or the mum that I know. And, the kids go shuttle between houses, or they all come together for birthdays and stuff. I unfortunately don't have that. So I as I say, emotionally, physically and financially responsible completely on my own for these two very, very large teenagers. And, when you're solo parenting can be very lonely. And I think when people refer to, oh, I'm a single parent, whether, as I say, it's dad or mum, or what the circumstances are, there seems to be, oh, well, the kids go off at weekends to the other parent, or, there's financial support. And that's not always the case. There could be a dad raising kids because he's widowed at a young age, and he's got young family. So he's not getting spousal support, or the same from a mum. So that's why I call it solo parenting, because you're solo.
And there's no one to bounce things off what's happened in work that day. And like, you had a corporate job, you were the founder of Ronald McDonald's house, that the charity house. So you had a big corporate job. You had 2 small babies. Like, you brought your second baby home from hospital as a solo parent.
Yeah.
And what struck me was, you said before you picked him up from the creche, you picked up 2 bottles of wine as well.
It was back in the day, and it's funny, being a non-drinker, it's funny. I sort of look, if I'm buying a bottle of wine for my mum, I'm going, Jesus, that's awfully expensive. It could be €7. And I'm going, that's very expensive. Because I remember there was somewhere in the last 13 years, there must have been a tax that came in on wine, because you could get 2 really good bottles of wine in Super Value for £5 each. And I'd literally have it timed to a T. I'd stop and run into Super Value, get the wine. The creche was around the corner, literally at the back of my local Super Value. And I'd run in, pick up the lads, home, door was shut, me and the lads. And it was like the Angelas would go, and I would pour the first glass of wine.
But you did school, the dinner, the bedtime, everything. And by 9 o'clock, the wine was nearly gone.
Oh, by 9 o'clock, the wine would be gone. That and everything, the kids would be sorted, life would be, the washing would be done, ironing would be done. I can't remember now as a non-drinker the last time I saw an iron in my life. But back then it was, I mean, the pressure.
Floating on the alcohol.
Yeah, everything was done.
Wow.
House was spotless, kids were spotless, you know, it all. And then I'd get up, Groundhog Day, get up the next day, and off you go again.
So you decided then one weekend you weren't going to spend, Mammy wasn't going to do a Saturday couch day. You needed to be there for your two boys.
Yeah.
And that was 13 years ago. Bring us back to that 1st of November, 13 years ago.
It was, I was out on Halloween night, the 31st, and I was in Dublin. And I'll always say, you know, I peaked too soon. Because coupled into the level of drinking, it was also, and you know, we touched on it earlier, that imposter syndrome and not feeling good enough about myself. So I would have had a good bottle of wine before I'd even gone out the door on the nights that I went out. Now, I didn't go out a huge amount because I had the boys, but so it wasn't, I never really drank because of the social element. Being out, I was even more uncomfortable. So then it made me drink even more. And so because I didn't really like being out. And I remember being out that night and being out in Dublin, came home, my babysitter had stayed the night. She went that morning, the next morning. It was Friday night into Saturday morning. And I just went, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do this. And there was nothing horrific really had happened. And I just went, you know what, I'm just going to give up for the month of November. And so what I did is every night at 6 o'clock, I would pour Diet 7-Up into a wine glass, that kind of placebo effect. And I did it for the month of November. And somehow I made the decision, and I don't think it was a very intentional decision, but I kind of went, I'll just bring this on through December, once it got to the 1st of December. And I think because back then there would have been a lot of lunches, a lot of work lunches, and they were really boozy. And then you'd have the dinners. And so I kind of thought, I'll just keep, and I was very uncomfortable. And, you know, this is a question I get asked a lot. You know, your life doesn't suddenly transform, Siobhan. Like the first year, I would say, was difficult because here's this person who didn't really feel that she fitted in at the best of times. And now I've no alcohol to mask that. Mm-hmm. So I have to kind of stand there and talk to people sober.
And as you said before, it wasn't exactly a coffee culture like it is now. You didn't meet a friend in a bar for a coffee.
Oh, nobody met for coffees. Went for walks. You didn't go for walks on if you went for a walk on a Sunday, it was only on the presumption that you were going to stop at a pub, even with the kids somewhere, on the pretense of getting them a soft drink and a packet of crisps.
Or you were hungover, you needed the cobwebs cleared or something.
Yeah. So, and that month, so I never said, I'm never drinking again. I never did any big grandiose, big statements. I didn't go to AA. I didn't outwardly seek help. I just did it. It just kind of was a natural progression. And that was now, the Christmas just gone is my 14th Christmas to not drink.
Fair play to you. Well, you inspired me to do it for November. And I have to say, having clarity and energy and getting rid of that foggy feeling, and I know you stayed off sugar as well yourself for the last lockdown, so I might give that a go for lockdown 3. I'm still toying with the idea, can I do no alcohol and no sugar, but like that, you said that you get energy and that clarity, and the brain fog lifts, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting, I have a friend who's just recently decided to stop, and she was on to me last night and she said, God, Siobhan, I'm exhausted, and she'd be in her 40s, and I said, yeah, you are exhausted, you're emotionally exhausted, because for however long, and again, she's not a big drinker, but she'd be a daily drinker, the couple of glasses of wine. I said, you're using that alcohol as a perceived distressor. So when you have those 2 glasses of wine on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, it's allowing you not to process or deal with whatever it is that's bugging you or that is going on in your world. You've taken that away. So now you have to deal with the stuff.
Okay.
So now it's not deal with the stuff as in go to therapy, but you actually now have to deal with whatever's going on in your day or your life. And that's exhausting because you haven't been doing it. So it's why one of my biggest things that I always say to people is your sleep is the most important thing.
Yeah, and when you have the wine, your sleep is unbroken, and like the stuff pops back in. Yeah, I'm there. I'm your sister there. Yeah. How did you move from the corporate world then to become a resilience coach? Was that all life changing experience through giving up alcohol? What was it?
It was, well, when I gave up alcohol, it was probably another maybe 18 months, 2 years. I had got completely burnt out working corporately. At this point, I had moved, I was always housed in the McDonald's head office when I ran the charity. And once the house was built, the Ronald House up at Crumlin Hospital, they were going to get an in-house manager, and I didn't want to do that. I'd kind of done my bit. And so the head of marketing, amazing woman, she offered me a job in running the communications. There hadn't been anybody specifically doing comms. So I took on that role. And what I will say about McDonald's is my experience is they were an amazing employer. However, I'm not corporate. And adhering, because anything I'd done up to that stage had been very creative. Even though I'm not a musician or anything, I'd worked within creative industries, and even running the charity and getting the house built was really creative. So here I am in this very corporate. I was on the obesity task force. I dealt with Brussels on the nutritional information for the back of the tray liners, like amazing stuff. But I had no interest. I was so mismatched for what I was doing. And remember, I was drinking. I was trying to run a house on my own, pay the mortgage, keep 2 kids going, and put on this facade that I was all okay. So I got completely and utterly burned out. So I never talk about burnout as something from a point of view of, oh, this can happen to you. It's my experiences as well. So I left McDonald's. There was one little bit of my journey. I bought a franchise from the UK for baby sign language, and I used to teach able-bodied babies how to sign.
You've had some career path.
And I loved it. And you know, Siobhan, it was amazing. And there are women out there, and I'm still connected via social media, who created groups, the different women in different classes, who 13 years, 12 years later are still friends. You know, they've gone on to have their 2nd and 3rd and 4th kids. And the problem, it didn't take off in Ireland. Back then, there was no baby swim. That whole big industry hadn't really taken off. And it was a UK company. And in the UK, it was massive. But
this is my sister. I'm going to, sorry. I'm on a Zoom interview. Can I ring you back later? Bye. She's one of those people who won't stop until I answer. Sorry. I should have had the phone off.
She must be in there somewhere. But it was, so I did that, and it ticked along. But it was at that point, the boys were young. There I am in the house of my own, and I went facing into another long winter. It was around September, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a night course. And what did I do? I'd done a bit of my own personal therapy, and I decided I'd do a 12-week course, an introduction to psychotherapy. So I did the first night. I went down to it. At the end of it, I went up to the lovely, lovely lecturer, and I said, I'm not being funny, but I have done therapy myself, and I kind of know what you're talking about. I thought it would be a little bit more. And he said, look, I had a chat with him, and at the end of the conversation, he said, I actually think you should go and do a degree. I think doing an intro into it, you know that you've kind of got this basis. So he told me who to contact. He said, you'll have missed a couple of weeks, but you'll be able to catch up. And I started my degree 1 day a week, every Monday. And I went on to I was only going to do the diploma, and then I went on and did my degree. And from then, and then I set up, interestingly, with psychotherapy, pure psychotherapy, you have to do 100 hours of client work before you can even graduate. So that you do that and you graduate. You have to do 50 hours of your own personal therapy. So you're pulled apart, back together.
Therapy yourself.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It has to be all signed off. If it's not signed off, you can't get to your cap and gown stage. But then to get your accreditation, you have to show that you've done 450 clinical hours to get to your accreditation. So, you know, it's still, once you've got your degree, there's still a long process to be actually taken seriously. So I did all of that, set up private practice. And I always felt with therapy, there was a lot of it that kind of, I went, I don't want to sit with people in their past. I want to help them to move forward. And I think maybe because of the age I was and the age of the boys, maybe it was something in me that I was like, but I want you to embrace the world. And there's incredible therapists out there who are pure psychotherapy. But at that point, that's where I went on to study neuro-linguistic programming and life coaching. And I did a diploma in nutrition. And I kind of put all of this stuff together, packaged it together. Did certified as a personal trainer. And that was my last.
All the things that you need to be a healthy new you, all the things that we're looking at for the new year. And you're doing all these courses online, but when did the book come?
The book came 2 years ago. It came out January 2019. So I had written it in 2018. And shortly, sort of simultaneously as I was writing the book, I was working on the TV documentary Stressed, which was the 2-part documentary done with Science Ireland on how to reduce stress, not eliminate, because we can't eliminate, but reduce stress in people without medical intervention. So everything we did with the 5 volunteers was all around mindfulness. It was around journaling, around therapy. It was around giving people life skills rather than saying, here, take this pill and you'll be grand. Because it's, you know, burnout, all of this stuff is dealt with by lifestyle changes, not by popping pills.
Okay, and I've been working with you for the last month, and we're working on this Siobhan not burning out, because I'm a doer and I say yes to lots of things. And so that's your life coaching, that you're helping people. But something interesting you said to me, working from home, and I've always worked from home because I'm a freelancer, but working from home during a pandemic is so different than working from home than we've ever worked before. And that's what I'd like you to give people that are listening to this today, this interview, you know, tips how we can work better for the new year ahead. And I know you're not into New Year's resolutions, but like just with your resilience coaching, how can you help us?
Well, I think, and you know, it was funny, before we started this, when you hit the record button, you went, hang on till I put my little note on the door, because you've got kids as well. Yeah. And you know, bear in mind, we're not perfect, we're not robots, neither are our families. But if you were working in an office, you would have what you call your office tribe, your office family. And people become very respectful. If they see you're on a call at your desk, they kind of go, oh, I won't go and talk to Siobhan, I'll come back to her in a minute, or I'll leave a post-it. And our family do not treat us like that.
Nope.
And our family, for the last 10 months, for all of those that have been remote working, and who will probably be remote working for quite a lot of 2021, our new work tribe is our family. So the boundaries that we've had in place for our families have to change in order to accommodate, because otherwise we are literally just going to be snappy heads, you know, because kids come up, you're on the phone, they don't care whether you're talking to your boss, your colleague, or your mother down the road. All they want is your attention. And I actually think kids, like animals, the minute you're on the phone, they could be in their rooms. They sense you're on the phone or on a Zoom. I must come in. But doing things like what you did, you know, putting that do not disturb on the outside. But the really important thing, it's all very well doing that, putting that little note on, but if you haven't communicated that, and this is the big thing, is communication to your new office tribe, which is your family tribe. Tell them how your day works. Tell them that unless somebody has fallen down the stairs or the kitchen's on fire, if that note is on the front of the door, please do not come in, please respect it.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on what age your kids are, but you could even use this as an opportunity. And I know there's a lot of changes, but maybe give them their own little do not disturb. That gives them a bit of privacy as well, so that it's bringing them, even, if they're a little bit younger, or theirs says, please knock twice, that you're now, because then if you're respecting their boundaries, they in turn will start to respect your boundaries, rather than the constant battle of don't come in, don't come in, don't come in. It's definitely about trial and error. There's always going to be things that go, well, that didn't work, so I'm not going to try anything else. No, do try something different. But with the remote working, if you can, and not everyone can do this, and I do appreciate this, if you can, have a designated space that's yours to work from. Because again, and I explain it as, if you were back in the office and you walked up to your colleague's desk and you saw the desk, laptop open, paperwork all over, but it's someone else's, you wouldn't think, oh, I better sit down at this desk and do work, because it's not yours, not your space. So if you take that into working from home, if you've opening up the laptop at the kitchen table, but then you're doing it sitting on the sofa, and then you do have a bit of a desk situation going on under the stairs, if you're flitting from space to space, your brain doesn't know where's your space. So create one space, whether it is in your bedroom if you don't have space, downstairs, whether it is the kitchen table, but keep to that space, because the brain then gets that connection.
And maybe everybody, we don't know what's going to happen after January 11th with kids at school. I suppose everybody should have their designated space, shouldn't they? Because last lockdown, I was sharing the desk with my son, and that just drove us both mad. It was my stuff pushed aside, his stuff pushed aside, because we said this room was the office room, and now it's Mammy zone. It's the dump room as well as Mammy zone. But I have to try and just, I had to invest in little small desks for each of their rooms and everybody. And my daughter treats her bedroom now like her little asylum. She calls it her little apartment. And we've kind of, we've all had to, because we don't know what's around the corner. I said this could go on for the next year. But you are doing courses to help people, and you've deferred it to the end of January now because, again, school is delayed getting back and everything.
Absolutely. And what I am going to be doing is, I'm so confused with my dates. So next week is the first week of January. The following week, the week of the 11th, I think it's the Wednesday or Thursday, I'm going to be doing a webinar, which I'll put up out on all my social media. And it'll be about an hour-long webinar where I'll be talking about the course so people can find out more information. And at that opportunity, then they can decide to sign up. It's a 5-week course where it's live. Each week there is a live teaching from me with Q&A, but each week you also get downloadable workbooks, PDFs, hypnosis recordings to help with sleep, because I'm passionate about the sleep. But it's about having a support network, not group therapy. It is coaching. It is to get people to understand how to be the best that they can be on the day that they've got, not the life they've got. There's no magic wand, let's all get up at 5 a.m. and meditate together. People have kids, or they're actually still in trauma. They might have bereavement in their family. Yeah. There might, there's a lot going on. People might have issues at the moment with feeling they're drinking too much. All of that gets addressed, but in a really safe space where there's honesty, bit of humor, because God Almighty, if we don't have some humor.
Yeah, we need it. But Twist in the Jar, that's where everybody can find all this information, your website, the social media. Where did you come up with the name Twist in the Jar?
So it's funny. I should talk about it more often. I'm 51, and my gorgeous mother, who's mad as a cabbage, our birthdays are a week apart. She's 75. And when she was 32, I would have been about 5, I think. She worked in an ad agency in Dublin, went to work one day, literally stunning looking woman, sat at her desk, keeled over and had a brain hemorrhage. There was no signs lead up to it, nothing. and she was paralyzed temporarily down her left side. I say temporarily, for about 6 months. And, you know, slowly, bit by bit, she regained her full movement and strength. Now, she's still, even now, she drives and everything, but she would still be slightly, I'd know it, slightly weaker on her left side. And she, at this time, she had separated just before that from my dad, and we were back living with my grandmother. And I remember, and I suppose with Twisting the Jar, there's kind of two sides. There's the resilience of my mother, but there's the resilience of the little 5-year-old girl in there as well. And because mum was in a hospital for a good few months, reclaimed back her powers, and then went on to have a full-on nervous breakdown and was committed into hospital because she couldn't cope with not being able to do what she'd been able to do before. So, but roll on in, I was about 15, and mum and I were now living in our own place in a grotty little flat. She went on to set up one of the first employment agencies in Ireland in the 80s, in the height of our recession. And I mean, if that's not resilience, I've no idea what is. So we were living in this rented flat, but we were standing in the kitchen and she was making spaghetti bolognese. And she went to twist the jar open, and she didn't have power, because remember, she's still it's minuscule, the slight weakness. So she asked me to twist the jar open, and I did. And you know yourself, Siobhan, when you're struggling, you've had a bad day, and you're like, I'm going to twist the jar open. I've got to twist the jar open, and you can't. But you eventually do it, and you hear that pop, that gorgeous pop. But there's loads of ways to twist the jar open. You can stab it on the top with a knife.
Give it a good bang from the bottom.
Bang from the bottom. You can run it underwater, rubber glove, edge of the table, all those things that you can do to twist the jar open on your own. And that's what we do. Predominantly as women, we do it an awful lot. We do it on our own. Or you can do what my mum did. Mum didn't go, I can't twist the jar open, therefore I can't cook dinner, therefore I'm no good, I'm weak, we're brilliant at. We are utterly brilliant from the minute we get up, that internal chatter. Mum asked for help on one component of what she was doing so she could go back to doing what she was doing best. And that's what Twisting the Jar is about, is my support to people with one component in their life so that they can go back to doing what they do best. And asking for help is one thing we are so bad about doing, because we see it as a sign of weakness. But Twisting the Jar is not about a sign of weakness. It's about a collective community that allows us all to allow everyone else to do what they do best, so we can all help each other twist the jars open.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that before now. That's inspiring. And like, I think everybody needs Siobhan Murray in their life. All women do, because we do try to do it all on our own. And like something you were saying to me, even in this past year, I ticked a lot of goals, ticked a lot of boxes. But something is, as women, we should remember shouldn't be the end goal. To be achievers. As something we're going to be working on is, instead of having goals, I should have systems. Can you touch a bit on that?
Yeah. So with your systems, let's just change that word to strategies. Okay. So what are your strategies? So, and especially, this we're going to be, people will be listening to this in the new year, and people have made the decision to have goals. I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to run this, or I'm going to give up this. And then you get to that goal, and you momentarily might have that, woohoo, I've lost the weight, or I've run the 5K. And then what? That doesn't last. Because so then you're literally, all that work has gone into that goal for not a huge amount of personal reward, because you set another goal. But what if we put strategies in place? So if the strategy is, I want to run, I've never run before, what's my strategy? You can have mini goals along the way, they're like little benchmarks, but your strategy is, okay, in order to have the energy to go running, I actually need to get to bed a little bit earlier, because I've got the kids at home, or whatever's going to happen. I actually need to get up maybe half an hour earlier because I'm going to run 10 minutes down the road and 10 minutes back. So it's putting strategies in place in order to be able to sustain it, so that it isn't a case of, okay, I've run 10 minutes down the road and I've come back again, now what? Because that then becomes part of your habits, and your habits become part of your way of living.
Okay, and that's what we're all need to strive for, living in this craziness that we're living in at the moment. But just a final question, Siobhan, because I think we could talk all day and night. New Year's resolutions. Okay, so you don't believe in them, but you do have an alternative.
I have an alternative, which is your word. Picking a word for each year. I've been doing it. This will be my 4th year going into 2021. And my word for 2021 for me is important. And the reason, and the way to explain it is, I've used empowerment before. I've used selfish. It's picking a word that is going to resonate with all different elements of your life. So is it important that I go for a walk every day? Yeah, it is. Is it important some days that I actually sit in the sofa and watch Bridgerton, all episodes? Back?
Some of us have done that.
Do you know what? I may have had a bad night's sleep. I might be feeling a little out of sorts. And do you know what? On that day, sitting down and watching Netflix is important, because that's as important as getting out for my walk. Or it could be, I go, is it important that I sit here and do nothing? No, it's actually not important. I'm just being, I just need to go and put my runners on, because that's going for a walk. Is it important that I eat well for myself? Not diet, but is it important I eat well? Yeah. Is it important I tally up my receipts every month? Because if we start to have a more positive viewpoint about the things that we kind of don't like doing, we then are more prone to doing them than if we see them as a negative. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I hate doing my receipts at the end of the month.
Yeah.
But if we see it as it's important, and it goes into
my husband, go away. He's trying to say goodbye to me.
We're all at family. We need to put boundaries in place for family.
I need to have a big sign outside my window now. Never mind my door there. Sorry.
But I think that's where we put so much pressure on, I'm going to lose weight or put on weight, or I'm going to get fitter. Well, why are you going to get fitter? Why? Because I've nothing else to do. It's the new year. Well, that's really going to last. Whereas if you pick a word and you go, and if selfish is your word, is it, I'm going to learn to say no a little bit more because I need to be more selfish. We have such a negative connotation to the word selfish. Or maybe the word is contentment. I've a couple of people have said to me, oh, my word's going to be happy. And I went, you can't be happy 24/7. That's not going to be realistic, but you can be pretty much content. Are you content with the exercise you're doing? Are you content with the life you're living? And with that, then you get happiness through that. But it's finding a word that you can hold on to, so that in 6 months' time, you're still checking in going, is my word still there? Yeah, I'm still doing that. Because
I think with, the next 2 months or however long they're going to do this next lockdown for, we can't just say to ourselves, we're going to do this for the next 2 months. As you said, check in with your word 6 months' time. And did you say your word for 21 is important, or is that a word you've used before?
No,
important.
My 2021 word is important. Is what I do, is my work important? Yes. Is going to bed and reading my book, because I have to say, even a lot of my good habits have slipped. I've been getting into bed and flicking through the phone, looking at the news updates, and I would have been for years now not doing any of that. But, so it's again about going, is it important I charge my phone up there? Yeah, it is, because I actually much prefer to read my book and go to sleep.
And talking about the book, we'll finish up on the book. Where can people get the Burnout Solution?
So if you can't get it in your local, because we want to promote, even though they're closed, they're still doing online. Their local bookstores, they'll order it in, or Eason's, Dubray, online on Amazon. It is on audio and it is on Kindle. But there are some fill-in bits. So having the hard copy is the best.
And as you said, you can go back over it, you know, refresh yourself. And yeah, I'm kind of a few chapters in now. So yeah, it's my homework. And my other homework for the next time we talk for one of our sessions is to have my word.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Siobhan, it's been lovely speaking to you.
Oh, lovely as always, Siobhan.
And is there anything else, any other wisdom you want to share with us before we finish up and enter into 2021?
Well, you know, my biggest thing is that we've always been, you know, the wellness industry, of which I'm part of, has been so focused on self-care and, you know, the external things that we do. I think one of the things 2020 has shown us, with so many businesses being closed down and things that we would have, you know, going to the gym would have been our self-care, or getting our nails done, or playing a round of golf, or for men or for women, you know, it isn't, self-care isn't the external. Self-care is your self-kindness. It's how you talk to and about yourself from the minute you get up to the minute you go to bed. And if one thing that people did for me today, or when they listen to this, is when you go to bed tonight, just say to yourself, job well done me, I've got through the day. That's all.
Brilliant. Siobhan, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you and your boys and yours, and hopefully we'll have you in Kilkenny at some stage on the pink couch, and we'll do an update on this again.
Absolutely. I'll be straight down to Kilkenny as soon as I can.
Okay. All right. God bless. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.